Hello everyone, my name is Angel Peralta. I am coming from Unity College, and today I will be presenting to you the idea of wildlife translocation in regards to conservation of species. So first we're going to discuss what wildlife translocation is. It's basically the effort to kind of enforce a healthy population of a certain species, to either reintroduce them after going extinct or to increase the population of them by introducing them to new areas and basically relocating them to new environments that they're not native to as an effort to kind of spread their population and grow their population to avoid extinction of their species. Now, with doing such, there are potential risks. With introducing a non-native species to a new area, this is endangering to not only the natural ecosystem there, there's the possibility of the introduction of new diseases to an area that they don't typically have there. This also is very disruptive to the natural ecosystem there, which is also called the fauna. And then the animal being introduced to a new environment and them not, knowing how to survive in this new environment is also a danger to the animal's welfare as well. So an example of a case regarding wildlife translocation is the example of the martens, the North American martens. So martens are basically from the weasel family, and here we have the North American martens and the Pacific martens. The North American martens are spread across North America in general, and the Pacific martens are more located towards the Alaska area, so more up north. They wanted to increase the population of North American martens, so they introduced them to the area in which the Pacific martens lived. And basically, this translocation led to hybridization between the two species. So these two species started mating, and basically, the genetic diversity between these two martens kind of went away, so it lessened there. And then the Pacific martens, they actually faced kind of the elimination of their own species because of how much they were mating and how more of this hybrid of the two was being created instead of the Pacific marten being its own kind of branch. Now, the ethical ramifications that come with wildlife translocation, it does include the lessened genetic diversity as discussed with the martens, which can potentially lead to the elimination of the native species and that distinguished branch of the species in general to where the hybridization occurs. This also is inducive to the spread of non-native species, as seen where the North American martens were introduced to the area of the Pacific martens. So the non-native species is kind of growing there in the area it's not usually at. And like I said before, the disruption of the fauna and the ecosystem, this is basically introducing things that aren't native to the area. So this can potentially spread new diseases from one area to the new area between the animals, which can also lead to a spread of disease between humans. And then we also see the spread of non-native parasites that the non-native animal has and is bringing over to these new areas. So there's a lot of dangers in translocating the wildlife to try to increase the population or trying to reintroduce them after going extinct. It's a good idea, but there are a lot of potential risks in doing such. As far as a policy that's related to the translocation of wildlife, we do have the Endangered Species Act of 1973. It was basically created as an effort to kind of conserve endangered and threatened species, and it focuses on using methods or procedures necessary to basically bring the endangered species to a point that methods aren't really needed after the fact. And one of these methods is translocation. Now, the Endangered Species Act is effective for what it's focused on, which is, saving and rescuing species from going extinct and getting them off of the endangered list. But it was actually found that with very little funding they have, there's actually a long backlogged list of species that kind of need funding to avoid extinction, but the money's just not there to help them. So although it is effective where it is, it could potentially be more effective given the certain funding that it needs. With this underfunding, they're also experiencing less protection of critical habitats for these animals. So it is good at helping animals to get off that endangered list or threatened list, but in other aspects, it is not enough to protect areas and habitats in which these animals need to survive. So, in improving the current condition of wildlife translocation, I really think we need to go back to the ethical approach of conservation biology, which is basically focused on the restoration ecology, landscape ecology, and adaptive management regarding like ecosystems and animals. So it more so takes on a holistic approach to how humans are impacting the biological diversity within ecosystems. So if we go back to this kind of thinking, we can kind of view how humans are impacting negatively to the different environments and the possible extinction of animals. So basically going back to the roots of, conserving the different animals and species within an area. And then as far as like the Policy Endangered Species Act and different changes we can make to the policy for improving, one of the big things is more funding, obviously. So as we mentioned before, with the little funding that we have, there's a lot of animals not receiving the help that they need. So potentially increasing the funding or changing the allotments of where money goes can potentially help that policy in being more effective. And then also overall better practices, maybe potentially researching and studying how introducing a new species to a different ecosystem is going to affect it before just putting them there. So that way we are, aware of the risk of new diseases, the spread of parasites, and the different risks that come with translocating an animal to a new area. And then also potentially improving the focus on critical habitat protection. It does go hand in hand with reintroducing a species to a non-native land. With doing so, like I said, there's potential risk there. But if we focus on protecting these critical habitats, maybe we don't have to introduce non-native species to an area. Maybe we can introduce them back to an area they are native to, so the whole idea of disrupting the fauna is practically eliminated. And here are some of the sources that I use just in case anyone wants to do their own research. And then overall, so the translocation of wildlife, it has good purpose, and it's an effort to conserve species, to kind of avoid extinction. And although it is intended to be good, there are risks and threats to conservation and sustainability, especially for the native species within lands that are being threatened by these new non-native species, the idea of introduction of new parasites, and the introduction of potential diseases that can damage the ecosystem there. So although it is well intended, there are a lot of risks and a threat to sustainability. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed and learned some new things.